The Cypher System rulebook is an incredible work of art that hosts a system that you can use to play any tabletop RPG in, either it being fantasy, science fiction, science fantasy, post-apocalyptic, superheroes, whatever. But I cannot shake off the feeling that it doesn't really shine through in one particular department. But that is where the genre books come in. Hi there fellow roleplayers and game masters, my name is Mr. Trosk and this is still your go-to YouTube channel for everything Cypher System, and today I want to talk about The Stars Are Fire. Again, an incredible work of art by Monte Cook Games that does the same thing as Godforsaken does for fantasy, but then for sci-fi. And that is bring one particular genre that you want to play at your table to the Cypher System and give you all the tools you need to run that genre at your table to the best of its possibilities. But before we take a look at this book that has one of the most beautiful covers in the world ever in the universe, I want to remind you that I'm still running a Kickstarter campaign right now for my own fantasy Cypher adventure. It is Isle of the Dreaded Curse, which is an adventure already published and fully written for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, but I'm now converting it into the Cypher System. And I'm working with very well-known YouTuber Cadup and with a friend of mine, Frederick, to make this happen. But in order to make this happen, I need a little financial aid, which is in the link in the description below. Also, if I hit my first stretch goal, I will have none other than Brian Syme, who is like the dude that does most of the Kobold Press art, to help us out with some additional art. So like always, what I want to do with this review is kind of talk about the physical book first and kind of give my first impressions and tell you generally what you get from The Stars Are Fire. And then I want to look deeper into the PDF and kind of talk about a few points that I think are really helpful and I think are really cool. So, what is The Stars Are Fire? Well, The Stars Are Fire is one of many genre books from Monte Cook Games. One goes into fantasy, the other one goes into science fiction, another one goes into superheroes, there's one that goes into horror, etc, etc, etc. And you can use these books to play that genre more at your table and have the tools in order to do so. Now, the first thing that I always notice from these genre books is the incredible covers. I liked the Godforsaken one and I like this one again because it is kind of a work of art, a painting, something you can frame and put against the wall. That is why it's always on display behind me, because you're kind of seeing like a picture within a picture within a picture, which is an astronaut's silhouette which has the surface of a planet here, and then there is something, at first sight it looks like somebody riding a horse with a lance, but then you look closer and it's more like a spaceship type landing thing, and then there's another planet here, there's stars here, and there's another planet here, giving you these science fiction vibes immediately. And if you put these books together, this is one of the most clever things I think. I'm just talking about the covers. If you put them next to each other, they all look completely different, but at the same time, they all look like they're part of the same line of books. Now, if you pick this thing up for your own 50-ish US dollars, you get a little bit something like this. In their words, aliens, robots, starships, creatures, and additional resources for campaigns ranging from gritty and realistic to swashbuckling and star hopping. A huge catalog of sci-fi equipment. Huge catalog of sci-fi equipment, all graded according to the tech level and style of your game. And that is something that's really strong in this book. They use kind of a tech level rating for your science fiction. So it's not just like one type of science fiction. You can go all the way from like James Bond, Minority Report kind of tech stuff, all the way up to Star Wars or Star Trek or Dune. You can play anything, and they kind of grade it to a tech level, and then they have the equipment and grade that to the tech level to fit your game. There is a space combat system for gripping ship-to-ship scenes that engage every player throughout the session. I can attest to that. I have an actual play where we did some space combat. Link will be somewhere here. Go watch it. It's an actual play, first episode. It has the space combat system in here, has one feature that I took out and I'm using in my game and really telling my players that it is an option, which is the red line feature. I will get into that. It's really, really cool. A complete sci-fi setting called the Revel. Humanity has colonized the solar system, our solar system, but a still mysterious event has caused the Earth to fall dark and quiet. The Revel is the is kind of like the campaign setting of the Stars Are Fire. You don't need to use that campaign setting. It's just a campaign setting you could play in. I personally did not get this book for the campaign setting, but it's awesome that it's in here. And then there is a full-length adventure and 2 sci-fi shorts in here. And the physical edition comes with a map. A map of the Revel, which is the campaign setting, which is the map, which is our solar system plus some extra stuff. But more importantly, on the back is this awesome bit of stuff that has all kinds of ships, ranging from very simple like ships. There's a ship here, like literally a sea ship that has an helicopter on it. There's a zeppelin on here, like an airship. There's a submarine, but there's also like these dreadnought type spaceships, and then there's like realistic, I'm trying to like realistic rockets and stuff like that. Yeah, this is really, really cool. Stars Are Fire of vehicles and spacecraft, which all have stats in the Stars Are Fire. But before we dig more into the PDF and I show you 1 or 2 things that I think are really cool from the Stars Are Fire, I want to talk about the quality of these books. These are expansion books to the Cypher System rulebooks, but they have a price tag of a full book. This one is set at 50-ish US dollars, but you also get a book that is worth 50-ish US dollars. First of all, this is 222 or 23 pages thick. It is filled with incredible art. It is written by the most amazing writers from Monte Cook Games. It has everything you need to play sci-fi, but also the quality is beyond anything that I have in my collection. I'm not lying. Wizards of the Coast, even Kobold Press, even freaking, I don't know, Jetpack 7, Loresmith, all of the books. I think if I toss this book against the wall, there will be a hole in my wall. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the Stars Are Fire, the PDF. Now that you have a general idea of what is in the book, I want to go somewhat more in depth. So if you don't want to have anything spoiled, then please click away, but I won't spoil like the entire book for you. There will be a lot of mystery for you to uncover when you read it for yourself. Just want to point you to like how it's set up and how it does its thing, and a few things that I think are really cool. Now, without further ado, there is one bad thing about this book, and it's if you scroll down, it's just empty. There's nothing. Just kidding, of course, these Stars Are Fire. Of course, it has credits and it has a table of content. And as you can see, it is split up in 3 different main teams. First of all, there's of course like welcome to science fiction, blah, 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 how to play. Yes, there is a basic explanation of how the Cypher System rules work. It is not like all of the rules from the Cypher System rulebook, but it is a basic explanation for if you just have a bunch of players that just want to sit down and play, have them read that part and then just start playing and have them uncover all of the rules while they play, because the Cypher System is purely ideal for that. So the science fiction world building is part 1. That is an entire guidebook, almost like a world building game master type of thing, that you can use to build your own science fiction universe that actually makes sense. And it is built and written so freaking good that it's almost like a step-by-step, no, it is literally a step-by-step guide you can use to build your own science fiction world building thingy. Then there is the Revel, which is the kind of like the campaign setting they built for this book in order to show off all of the rules they came up with for playing sci-fi. And then there's of course role-playing in the Revel, which is more for the players and also the GM, how like for example getting the PCs involved. There is a full adventure in there, and there's 2 Cypher shorts in there just to get you started in that campaign setting. So I want to go over, like, first of all, there's welcome to your science fiction universe. There's sci-fi adventure seeds and all that jazz. There is the how to play section, like we said, but I want to scroll down kind of to the world building. This for me is the main part of the book. The Revel is a cool campaign setting, and I will talk about it a little bit, but I don't see myself playing it because I'm more of a type of person who comes up with a campaign setting while playing. I just take a basic idea and I run with it. I play highly improvisational games, and as you can see, it is a step-by-step guide. And first, I talk about all of these steps separately and give like general information on what they mean, and then further in the book they go deeper into that. First one, ground rules. Step 2 is setting and team, which they talk about like how a setting of a campaign setting can generally be explained in like 1 or 2 sentences. Like for example, the one in here, the Revel, is just a science fiction setting where planet Earth has gone dark, but there's people living on Venus and I don't know, the moon and all stuff. So that's basically what they mean by setting and team. Sorry. Then step 3 is establish a technology rating, and I think this is really cool and really important and really well done. They kind of split the technology up in 3 main bits, which is contemporary, advanced, and fantastic tech rating. So why they do this is because they want you to be able to kind of have a guideline. It's not set in stone. You can do whatever the fuck you want because it's your game, but kind of have a guideline of what technology you could use in your game and have it make sense. Contemporary is where you have technology that is available today, but could be more widely available in the future. That's how they say it. For example, if you would live in like the 90s, for example, contemporary would be a cell phone. There was a cell phone in the 90s, but it existed, but not everybody had one. So a contemporary science fiction setting for the 90s could be 2025, 24, 23, where everybody has a freaking cell phone. So advanced can be more somewhat spaceshipy, flying, hovering cars. There's mech suits. They have some Back to the Future glasses here. And then fantastic is, of course, your space opera kind of thing. And again, this is not set in stone. You can have some of this in there, and you can have some of that in there. And then there is an incredibly there's first a few more steps. Choose cosmic set and pieces and optional rules, which is also important if you want some optional rules in there. For example, you want this entire science fiction setting, but you don't want faster than light travel. Maybe your entire setting is confined within one solar system, and you don't want FTL drives to exist. Or you have this science fiction setting where time travel exists or doesn't exist, stuff like that. Establish options for your players. It's a really, really, really good guide, as you can see, with some incredible artwork. Also, this one is really, really important for me. Science is hard. If you play in science fiction, there's probably going to be, if you're not like a science geek, especially for like space opera stuff, nobody really knows what's going on there, right? There's bound to be a player at your table who knows more than you do. It's for me, that's the case. I love science. I'm a big science geek, but I often make mistakes from the top of my dome and just like because it's fantasy for me when I'm playing it. So they kind of talk about how you have 2 options. First of all, you could have them as your person you reference to and say like, hey, I want this to happen. How would that happen if it could happen? And they could give a vague explanation to it, and you could then set that into rules for the Cypher system. Or you can just say, shut the fuck up, this is my game and we're running it like I'm doing for my actual play. Yes, we have spaceships that shoot real bullets in space, which probably doesn't make sense. The fuel type we use doesn't make sense. The faster than light stuff we use doesn't make sense. But it's just really fun, and that's just the way I play it. But that's just really important that you set those ground rules before you start playing, especially with science fiction. Because nobody really likes the actually kind of player at their table, which most of the time is me. Next up is an incredibly long list of science fiction subgenres. If you'd ask me for science fiction subgenres, I could come up with like 3 or 4 from the top of my head, but they go into so much here. And I'm like accidental travel, right? Accidentally popping up in an alien planet. Alien invasion could be something. There is alternate history, apocalyptic, cyberpunk, dystopian, all kind of stuff that I can't even read. 11th Reich, which is always really cool. It's where the Germans won World War II, which is basically like the entire Red Alert series is 11th Reich sci-fi. First Contact, hard science fiction, military science fiction, near future science fiction, robots and post-humans, science fantasy, singularity, slipstream, steampunk, space exploration, space opera, time or dimension travel, the Grand Imperium, uplift, utopian, virtual reality. And if you don't have enough inspiration yet to start playing your sci-fi game, there's Conflicts of the Future, which is basically a D100 table that has conflicts of the future. So let's roll a D100. Just for the sake of it, I've got a 76. So I'll have to scroll down a bit because D100 tables tend to be very large, especially when Monte Cook Games does them. A 76 would be right over here. An unexpectedly close, within a few light years, gamma ray bursts, threatens to severely impair or wipe out civilization. Boom! You got yourself a campaign. You got yourself a freaking campaign. Because there is a beam that's going to wipe out civilization, and it's coming, and your players need to go Armageddon style into a spaceship, fly into the beam, and make it spread out or something like that. I don't want to close my eyes. Credits roll, and we got an incredibly cool game. Multinational conflict between humans or similar beings kicks off the next world or larger scale war, where regimes bring to bear both controversial military might, nukes, and a variety of advanced technological weapons. That's the kind of stuff that people are really scared of right now, which could be a really cool setting for a sci-fi game, because it could like introduce some weaponry that is that exists today but isn't in use yet. So like experimental weaponry and stuff like that, introduce it in like World War III type of environment. So all of these give you like just one thingy in your brain that makes the juices flow, and you got yourself an entire campaign. And then the book continues to give you rules upon rules upon rules, and the bits and pieces of guidelines you can take out of the book and put in your campaign, or bits and pieces of guidelines you can take out of the book and throw into the garbage bin, depending on what type of game you want to play at your table. For example, there is a harder science fiction. There's void rules, which basically just say something like, if shit hits the fan in space, shit hits the fan really good. It's not like on Earth where you know if you drop a can of Coke, it will drop to the floor. But the stuff it can do in a spaceship where there's technology going around and stuff like that, it could be really potentially really dangerous and deadly. Those are like void rules you can implement. Effects of vacuum, space suits that can fail, which has then like in GM intrusions. If somebody like rolls a 1 on a space suit kind of type of thing, you can have like GM intrusions. They give you all of those tools. There's more GM intrusions here, player intrusions. All of those tools for your science fiction, for fantasy type game, which, yeah, is really the strength of this book. Then there is the equipment, and although there's an entire section on like guns and masks and spacesuits and all of that jazz, there's also a complete list with what they call vehicles and spacecraft. So after some really cool artwork and some explanation, they go into some vehicles you could put in your game. And as you can see, some of these are really simple because they split them up into the 3 tiers of technology levels that I talked before, which is contemporary, advanced, and fantastic. So they split it up in planetary vehicles. For example, there's motorcycles, there is a cruiser, there's the dirt bike. Then in the advanced section, there's more like this Mad Max stuff going on, with like a gun on top of a motorcycle, and a motorcycle that is omni-terrain. And then there's a vacuum cycle. Fantastic planetary vehicles are more like, what is this, a hover speedster or something like that. There is this Akira type thing here, snow thing here, an instant cycle. As any one other cycle except an instant cycle can be deployed from a lightweight briefcase sized or even smaller pack as an action. So it's kind of like with Back to the Future with the hoverboard. Suddenly you have a you have a motorcycle, or a cycle in this case. There's cars, in here, and all they have for every thing, so let's say there is a used car, four-wheeled vehicle supporting a slightly dented and rusted metallic frame. So it is a level 3 thing. It is expensive to very expensive, depending if you're buying like a Fiat or you're buying like a Jaguar or whatever. And it is a level 3 vehicle, meaning that anything you do with it, it has a difficulty of 9. You need to roll on your d20, and then they just say it has something. For example, this can go 80 miles an hour, but if you go further into these vehicles, there's more land vehicles, there is a hover car, there's all of that jazz. And I really like how they keep all of this very simple, but also there is enough. And the most important thing about these books, again, is like the GM intrusion. So wheeled cars, GM intrusions, there is a D10. So let's say somebody does something with their wheeled car, wheeled vehicle, and they roll a natural 1. So I do a GM intrusion, I roll 1 as well. Vehicle runs out of fuel or power, which is a very basic thing to have, but it could be it runs out of fuel, and player might be like, no, we just fueled up, and then you as a game master are like, yeah, indeed you fueled up and you drove for a little, and then now suddenly it is out of fuel, and the gauge is still on full, but it is out of fuel. So you look under your vehicle and you see fuel dripping out. So probably there's something wrong with the car, and you hit something. You might have hit a rock or something, and your fuel is just dripping out, and it is not running right now. So the players might be able like to save it by salvaging it or putting a bucket under it, and then like fixing the tubing or whatever, so there's vacuum again, and so they can put it back in and they can drive for a couple of miles and just barely make it. So a GM intrusion is not like a fuck you finger towards your players. It's actually to make the story more interesting, like the movie Martian, where in the book he's almost at the destination where he needs to be. I think it's left out in the movie, but he's almost at the destination where he needs to be, and then he just tips over. Boom. This Mars car rover thing he built just tips over, which makes it more interesting at that point in time. It's like where the DeLorean doesn't start in the last sequence of Back to the Future. That's basically what the GM intrusions are for. It's to keep you on the edge of your seat. So one thing my players have, for example, is this one right here, the Starship General Purpose. So a general purpose starship, only a level 3 starship, a small starship with room for only 3 to 6 crew. So my players there's 2 of them, so there's room for them. Plus an integrated ship, artificial intelligence, able to handle many routine ship functions, including like navigation with faster than light propulsion systems, designed for exploration of distant locations, salvage operations, and or to act as a tug craft for larger ships that need assistance. May possess a single weapon system such as a particle cannon. That is exactly what I gave them. I gave them a general purpose starship that they use to haul magic items around. They bring like ciphers from place to place in this actual play, and they're cargo haulers, but they also have like an old school, almost World War II like turret on top of their ship to like more scare off and suppress space pirates than hit anything at all. Now the person behind the gun hit their own ship, but that's another story. So I give that to them. It's a level 3. It's really easy. May possess a single weapon. So you just come up with that. So this is, all of these are more like, and that's just how the Cypher system works, right? It's more IDs to put in your game, and you can do things with these spacecrafts, what you want. You can add stuff to it. You can add shields to it. You can add more guns to it. If people want to like pimp it and turn it into like a thing that has guns everywhere, they can. You as a game master absolutely can. I want to also quickly talk about space combat. Now, space combat and vehicle combat, like normal combat, melee combat, whatever, ranged combat in the Cypher system, is always really straightforward and fun with like GM intrusions and player intrusions, and it is designed to keep the plot moving forwards. Now, what they do with this book, The Stars Are Fire, is just expand a little bit on the rules that already exist in the Cypher system rulebook. And one thing they add is really cool. It is the red line maneuver. maneuver. Now, once a pilot or a gunner in a ship or even a mechanic or whatever declares they're doing a red line maneuver, it actually means they're going to go in the red with what they're trying to do. It's like racing with your car and just shifting at the very last moment, and it basically means that what you're doing is eased by one step. So that means just for example, you're trying to dodge a few asteroids that are coming at you, right? You could do it in the normal way and try to do it like this, but you can be like, oh my god, if one more hits, we're dead, right? So you're going in the red and you're really turning and pushing your airplane or your starship into making turns that it normally barely can. That's a red line maneuver, and from that moment on, all the players on the ship can basically do everything they want on the ship eased by one step, which also means that instead of rolling, when you roll a natural 1, you normally get a GM intrusion, but now when you get a natural 1, a natural 2, and a natural 3 or a natural 3, you also get a GM intrusion. Now the person declaring the red line maneuver can also do 2 levels of red line, giving the chances of failing or getting a GM intrusion, making that chance bigger. Basically, now you get a GM intrusion on a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5. So red line maneuvers are a really cool addition to the game where you can do epic shit on the fly, but it's also really dangerous because shit might hit the fan. And we're already almost half an hour into this video and we haven't even uncovered like half of this book. But there's also, of course, like in almost all books by Monte Cook Games, which they do really well, creatures and NPCs. So Monte Cook Games, with whatever book I get from Monte Cook Games, there's new creatures in there. For the Godforsaken book, it is fantasy creatures. For this is more sci-fi creatures. There's all kinds of creatures in like the Numenera book. For the Numenera setting, there's creatures in the basic rule book from of the Cypher System. Every book I get by them, there's new creatures in that, and that is really, really cool. So like we expect, these are all like sci-fi creatures, right? So there is an artificial intelligence, which is a creature, a hybrid or something like that. There's a devolved, which is more like the really weird thing you don't want to encounter. And as you can see, some of these are really I don't know who comes up with this, but it's really cool, really cool creatures. If you want to know how creatures work in the Cypher system, how you can run them and how they're pretty easy, like with the stat block being, oh shit. Okay, being really easy to comprehend and all that stuff, make sure to check out my video. I have a video on how creatures work in the Cypher system. Check that out if you want. So yeah, you can expect a lot of really cool additions to the creatures you already get from the Cypher System main rulebook. Now, with this video becoming exceptionally long, I've decided not to go too deep into the Revel, which is the campaign setting that is in this book. If you want to know more about that, put it in the comments below and ask me. I might do a separate video on that. But the Revel, basically, in short, people discovered tunnels, ancient tunnels on the moon, which they call Lunar 1. These tunnels, nobody knows how they got there, who dug them, but they're ancient. They are thousands of years or something like that old. And as soon as they discovered these tunnels, there's people, by the way, living on Lunar 1 and on other planets in our solar system, the Earth went completely dark. So there is this darkness that surrounds the Earth and nobody knows what happened. Nobody knows. Everybody who tries to go into the darkness that is on Earth disappears and never returns. So it is from the standpoint of the people outside the darkness that the Revel is built, and you can play it off as kind of nobody really knows if the people on Earth are still alive, or you can play it off as like they all died, whatever. Now I'm putting this way simpler than it is, so my apologies to whoever wrote it. It's really cool if you read it yourself, but that's just the main premise of this campaign setting, and I think it's pretty damn cool. And that's basically it for the Stars Are Fire. There's one really important point I need to make, and that is if you get 220 2 pages from the Cypher System from Monte Cook Games, it is different from getting 222 pages from 5th edition, because the simplicity and the straightforwardness of the Cypher System, every page contains way more information than a page, for example, for 5th edition. Because 5th edition, a page often includes a lot of math and a lot of numbers and a lot of statistics and all of that stuff. It is less true with the Cypher System, meaning that a book like this is just something that you can read, you can open up, and it will surprise you every time again when you open it up. You can use whatever you want from it. These are more toolboxes than they are complete campaign settings or complete books that you need to use fully, and you can just place it into your game and build your own sci-fi game with the help of the Stars Are Fire. If you are interested in the Stars of Fire, click the link in the description below, and until next video, bye bye.